Hi everyone, it's Stu here from 3B with the review of the Corsair Obsidian 500d RGB. So what makes this so special? Well, it's an all-metal, brushed metal case, really well made, very solid. Tempered glass on the front and both sides, both doors are hinged with a magnetic sort of soft close, I would say, sort of a cushion close rather than a slow close. You can gain access both to both sides very quickly and very easily. It contains a good amount of dust sort of protection with these magnetic pull in and slide out lint dust collectors, which work really well. And as you can see, you can side mount a GPU. The fan that you can see on the right here, I bought as an addition, but the case actually just comes with a standard fan for the exhaust on the back, but does come with 3 Corsair RGB lights that you can program using Corsair's software called IQ, which allows you to make lots of pretty patterns, make it look nice and fancy, and do all sorts of weird and wonderful things. You can also have it, for instance, change color to the temperature of the case or the temperature of your CPU or GPU, whatever you wish. So there's lots of variety there that you can do. And also the IQ software controls everything else that's Corsair. So for instance, I've got a Corsair PSU and a Corsair all-in-one water cooling system, which you can see underneath there. I actually replaced the fans for better ones. I can't remember what those are, but they weren't very cheap. I can't remember what they are, so perhaps somebody can remind me what they are in the comments. And I took my previous build and put it in this one from my old case. So on first appearances, you know, it looks great. It's a well-made case. It's solid, it's heavy. The first one I got I had to return simply because this front panel glass was actually come away at the bottom. It's actually just glued to this, to the actual case itself. So what had happened for some reason is it actually just came away. The other thing it comes with is power supply, reset, USB 3, USB-C, mic and headphone connectors. And then you also get the RGB controller, which you can see here. It's all a bit dark this side, it's not very exciting, but I will talk about the installation of moving from my old case to this one, because there are some real key things that I faced. First of all, you know, it's a great looking case. I love the case. What I didn't love was moving all my stuff into this case. So let's talk about those problems sort of as you come across them when you're installing or moving your equipment from one case to another. The first thing of note is the PSU housing. Previously with cases, I've had them sort of slide in from the back, which makes things a little bit easier, but not with this. It doesn't slide in from the back. You actually have to kind of push it in to the side, which makes it very awkward because you have all the cables for the controller, for the lighting and everything, plus all your own cables. Can't really see that very well, but all your own cables for everything else. And then if you're using, like I've got these, I think they're thermal take custom cables, the black and white ones. So you attach those to your existing cables, so you have even more cable to try and hide. And what you get, you don't get a lot of room. There's actually a metal cover that would normally cover over this sort of channel of pipe cabling here, but it's so narrow and so thin that it's simply not possible to use. And not just because I'm using, you know, custom cables that are connecting to my existing cables. Just my normal cables alone, when I first tried to sort of put this together, there was just so little room, eventually resulting in me not using the cable cover, which is a metal cover that covers the channeling here. So that was a real pain. The additional pain was that there's these sort of, it's obviously how the case is made, but the edging, there's these sort of very sharp edges here and sort of on every corner really. And what I found is when I was sort of shuffling my PS power supply unit into here, and it's very tight, it was scratching the hell out of it, and there's very little room for all your cables inside here to sort of bury them. So it's a real bind to get that just right. And the other thing you have to get right, of course, is you can't have these jutting out too much. You know, because if they are, this door, this side panel, this glass side panel simply won't close. And it only just closes for me. And, you know, I've got everything sort of tightened up as much as possible to enable that. So those were the initial things that I found with getting all the cabling through to the other side. And there's another story with that. And you got your motherboard in and what have you. And if you're using an all-in-one, what I found is there's a bracket that the all-in-one attaches to. And how they have this bracket working is really incredibly awkward. It's just, it's not very simple to use because you're blind once you have the all-in-one attached to this bracket to then be attached to the top of the case. You can't then see where this bracket goes, and it goes in a very particular place. There's sort of slots allotted for the bracket, and when you're trying to put it in, you have no idea where these slots are. So it's a real sort of trial and error to get it just right. And if you don't get it right, you won't be able to fit the screws. Talking of screws, there are some screws which can sort of just be adjusted by your, you know, just normal thumbs, and then there are others that you would make sense to be adjusted by thumbs, but actually you need a screwdriver for. Case in point is the hard drive bays. These just have sort of standard screws that you can't, that just fall out, and when they fall out they land in the case and you can't find them, so they don't just sort of, I can't think what they're called, but it makes it very awkward. And there's a very similar thing with the hard drive caddies than there is with the cooler bracket, in that these slot in a very particular way, but when you've got your drive in and you're trying to re-slot them into where they need to be, you can't see where they need to be, so you're really fiddling around with getting the brackets in the right place because you're doing it blind because your hard drive is in the way. These hard drives are just used for sort of media storage. I've got two M.2 drives on my motherboard as well, which I use for sort of OS and main software and so on. So those are the real problems I had with getting it to do what I want it to do. And there was one final thing which drove me nuts, and this is sort of very particular to mounting the GPU sideways. Thankfully, before I did that, I made sure there was a good amount of room between the tempered glass and the GPU, so it's not choking it. There's about an inch of room. But when I was installing it, you have this bracket here, you take that off, and then there's sort of the standard sort of connectors, screws and so on. But what happens is, it's so fiddly because it doesn't fit particularly well. If you've got a GPU, you kind of have to do it one-handed, or unless you've got somebody that can help you to stop it from the weight of the GPU sort of bending the case a little when it goes in, is that the screws, when you're putting them in, end up falling into your GPU. So you then have to take your GPU out, take everything off, and then shake the screw out and try again. And I had to do that twice. And I thought, well, maybe it's just me being cack-handed. A bit of paper just sort of wedged in there when I was installing the card to stop the screw from falling inside the GPU. Obviously, it depends on what GPU you have, of course. So, with that in mind, if I'd known all this, would I have still bought the case? Yeah, probably. It's not a cheap case. It is incredibly well made. It looks great. It's got plenty of room. I'm not concerned, but just sort of annoyed by the lack of thought in terms of the thinking behind how the wiring and all the channeling and everything works at the back. It seems as though somebody that designed that part has never built a PC before, because they didn't give a lot of options or a lot of room, and they could have managed that better. Everything else, the build quality, the solid nature of it, the fans, the cooling, the space, everything works well, including the Corsair IQ software. So I think if this were ever in a sale, I'd be more inclined to buy it. Certainly recommend it if it was in a sale. At full price, yeah, maybe not. In hindsight, if I knew all these problems and I knew all these problems beforehand, then maybe I wouldn't have jumped straight in and paid normal, retail price for it. But, once you move your case, move everything out of the old one into the new one, a lot of these things you only discover when you're putting all your gear into the case. And these are the sort of the corners that I'm talking about, that things tend to catch on. On the opposite side, on here, they're not too bad. But on the opposite side, where you're actually hoofing things in, they're really kind of sharp. So, yeah, I would recommend this if it was on sale. It probably will be this year some point, because Corsair have released some more cases. Probably with even more RGB fans. But it's a great case. It looks really nice. It's incredibly solid. It allows quick and easy access to all your bits and bobs, and looks fantastic when it's sort of dark at night and it's all lit up. So that's the Corsair Obsidian 500d RGB case.